Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin defeated Democratic candidate Terry McAuliffe in the Virginia governor's race on Tuesday night. Many have dubbed this win a huge Republican victory. In last year's presidential race, Joe Biden had a double-digit victory over Donald Trump in Virginia. So, what does the Republican win in Virginia say about the overall political landscape of the United States? Will we continue to see Republican gains across the country? With me via Zoom, I have Matthew Tyrmand, who is a journalist from Breitbart and a board member of the organization Project Veritas. Welcome to Riks, Matthew.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So what does this Republican win in Virginia mean?
Well, it's not just Virginia. It's all over the country. Virginia is the most high profile given the gubernatorial, the head of the state, and its proximity to D.C., its recent history as a trending blue Democratic state, thanks to the population weighting outside the D.C. area. But New Jersey, Minnesota, Texas, New York City, Buffalo, there are so many data points about what happened on Tuesday night that suggest that the referendum on the Democratic control of obviously the presidency and where the Democrats have gone portends a very strong Republican red wave in the midterms in 2022. So 1 year from now, which also historically fits given when there's a presidential shift, the midterm usually has a reversion back toward the other party. But here, this was somewhat unparalleled. Given these Democratic bellwethers that went red or almost went red. Virginia used to be a red state. Then the population grew outside D.C. Thanks to the growth of government and the growth in the Democratic voters that work for government outside the D.C. area.
So why do you think we're seeing this trend here? I mean, is it that people are just getting more critical towards Joe Biden here? Or do you think it's about rejecting progressivism?
It's both. It's a confluence of events, and that's why the other data points outside Virginia also tell a lot of the story. There's definitely a referendum on the presidential turnover. The fact that Democrats in suburban Washington actually trended toward the center and even toward the right. There are obviously in each constituency, there are electoral issues in play. In Virginia, it was very heavily weighted toward the education debate and critical race theory when Terry McAuliffe, who is a very strong proxy and symbol for the Democratic establishment, and his views move where the Democratic establishment goes. This is a guy who was very close to Hillary Clinton. The guy was governor previously, and he was running again. And when he said that parents do not have a right to tell the school boards what their kids are being taught, they should not have input on the curriculum. And in that area, in particular, in the suburban DC area, which is so far left, generally speaking, there was a huge debate, especially in Loudoun County and Fairfax County, about what was being taught. And the radicalism out of these school boards was so over the top that even center-left and Democrat parents rejected when McAuliffe said that they have no right to say to the school boards what their kids are being taught. In New Jersey, I think it was a different issue. And the fact that New Jersey was 50-50 just about. I mean, this is a state that Biden won convincingly. Now, New Jersey is a Democrat machine state with a heavy union presence in the cities. So there's always been Chicago-style election chicanery and irregularities. But Biden did win it convincingly with or without those irregularities last year. It was 2.6 million votes to 1.8. That's a 60-40 spread. So and here you have 50-50. That is a pretty strong rebuke against the Democratic Party and a Democrat stronghold.
So where do you think Joe Biden is failing here? I mean, there's been more and more criticism geared towards him. I mean, for example, falling asleep at the latest climate conference. What other things do you think, why are people criticizing him now?
Well, I mean, a list of where Joe Biden is failing would far outscale our 10-minute interview. He is clear to all a comatose vegetable. I would add in the word corrupt. So he's a corrupt comatose vegetable, as was well proven with his family's China relations in the electoral cycle and the media having to run interference, blocking out any reportage of these facts. So you have Afghanistan, that worries a lot of people. The pullout where you left $87 billion worth of armaments is the figure that's been bandied about. And and left a power vacuum, which will obviously be filled by the Taliban, who has a strong history of harboring radical Islamic jihadists who are not afraid to go into other countries and set off bombs. That is certainly something that's been at the forefront of the national zeitgeist. But in every single capacity, economically, the number one issue for most people is economics. There's an old saying, it's the economy, stupid. And we're seeing the first really strong inflation in America since Jimmy Carter, another hapless Democrat president who was overly laissez-faire about using politics and policy to help people. And those were the famous days of gas shortages and massive lines at the pump. Now we're talking about 5% inflation, and people are seeing it across the divide. That goes beyond politics. You're seeing supply chain breakdowns and shortages of goods. You're seeing a shortage of labor because the extension of government transfer payments. So there's a shortage of truckers to deliver goods to market. There's so many different facets of where the Democrats are failing because they're so focused on a radical leftist agenda, whether it's critical race theory in the schools or climate change as the existential threat, not economic threats, not radical jihadism, but climate change and the push to spend more and more taxpayer money on fighting a very abstract conceptual framework that nobody really knows how we're going to solve.
So where do you see the conservative movement going? I mean, as we near towards 2024.
Well, I think they're going to focus on like the pocketbook issues, the idea that if you give people transfer payments and you give an incentive or a disincentive to work, then you're going to have employment problems, and we're seeing that's affected the economy in every facet. The radical left, what they're pushing. I mean, give you an example. In Minnesota, there was a ballot referendum on defunding the police. This is something after George Floyd. Minnesota is a very hard left state. Generally speaking, Minneapolis being the urban leftist elite weighting of that radicalism. And so post George Floyd, you had the mayor, Jacob Frey, you had the Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, really pushing a defund the police. Well, that ballot referendum failed 87-13 because apparently even the reduction of police and the war against police so that they were not policing as effectively and dramatically proactively as they should have been doing, but they've been under siege by the policymakers in Minnesota. Well, when people saw the crime tick up, they decided maybe it's not a good idea to eradicate the police force and replace it with a social worker, social service structure. So that failed overwhelmingly in probably the furthest left electorate outside of California, which is Minneapolis, the Twin Cities. In Buffalo, there was a mayoral race. The incumbent Democrat got primaried out by a hard left AOC Ilhan Omar style radical leftist activist. So the Democrat mayor ran a write-in campaign and won overwhelmingly, even though he wasn't formally on the ballot. This is a centrist moderate Democrat. Buffalo is a hard scrabble, blue collar Union Rust Belt town. So there are data points all over the place. Texas, San Antonio is the blue. There are two cities in Texas, San Antonio and Austin, that are pretty Democratic blue, and San Antonio just went red for the first time in ages. So New York City Council had Republicans pick up seats. New York City, the city council, again, like Minneapolis, this is unparalleled.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
that is pretty unbelievable. I mean, what I'm hearing is that people are starting to see what happens when you have kind of these radical leftist agenda actually being put into practice, and they're like, no, we don't want this. Is that right?
Oh, no, that's very clear. When you look at New Jersey and these suburban districts and counties, many of them that Biden won easily, that Trump was not very popular, well, they went red or they went 50-50. They went close. Some of them went red as they were tabulating the votes, and then they started counting, mail-in votes very, very late, and they were able to take them back just barely. But the fact that counties like Bergen County, right outside New York City, which is a pretty good suburban proxy for a lot of Main Street USA counties and swing districts, swing states across the country, the fact that that was in play or went red should be very, very alarming to the Democrats. And the real kicker, the best part is when you're watching the CNN coverage of election night, all the commentators are nodding in unison like bobbleheads that this is further proof that white supremacy is on the rise. So they've missed the point entirely. The whole reason they're being rejected is because they live in the clouds. and are so out of touch with reality. Nothing about economic issues, nothing about the worry over an Afghanistan pullout, nothing about a president who's falling asleep in meetings, global meetings and confabs. Yeah. So people look at it and they say, okay, well, we're going to tack toward the center. The beauty of the American political system is that when a far left or far right hijacking occurs, some sort of revolution, whether it's reactionary or radical, occurs, the American electorate swings it back toward the center. This has been going on visibly since the 1830s, and de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America. Yeah. So it's not surprising that this is happening. Look, I don't believe that Biden won a election honestly. He was installed using a system of hijacking through ballot stuffing in only six cities that swung 6 states. So this further bolsters the thesis that in 2021, an off-cycle election year, that the Republican red can pick up so much ground. It makes people question, how did he really win? There's so little enthusiasm for him. And now when you don't have this national electorate where everybody went all hands on deck in a decentralized coup through COVID mail order ballots, and stuffing them, late counts and drops, people are even more on the right, overwhelmingly so, convinced that it was chicanery that delivered the election of Biden in 2020. And you've got centrist leftists and Dems even saying, well, whether it was or it wasn't, I cannot stand by this.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to continue to follow this. So thank you so much, Matthew, that you can comment with me today.
Oh, my pleasure, anytime.
And thank you everyone for watching Riks. Och tack så jättemycket för att ni tittar på Riks. Glöm inte att prenumerera på våran kanal genom att trycka på knappen här nedanför. Och om ni vill ha nya notiser om de videos som vi lägger upp, så tryck på ringklockan.